Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never popped into my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside, and I tell ya, I did not want to explore anything today. It was so difficult to make any kind of movement. Usually on Mondays, me and my sister, we like to go thrifting, and we were actually giving each other excuses as to why it was okay that we could skip today, right? Cindy's got a video she's got to upload, and my sister had some listings she needed to do, right? Valid excuses, but when we commit, right, we really actually decided to put this effort in, and it's important for us to push against what's given us permission to take it easy, I think, because we felt so much better once we were on the road. I just said, get dressed, right, let's do this, because we committed to at the very least to try it out to see if we would like it. And, we have a little routine we do on Mondays. It's an opportunity for us to stay connected, spend a little time with each other. And, she's one of the sisters that I do actually have some commonality with, right? We both love history. We both love knickknacks and doodads. We love that idea of finding something for nothing and possibly turning it into a treasure. My sister Alice has done that numerous times over the past 20, 30 years. This is how long she's been putting a roof over her and her family's head. Now it's just her head. Her children have now left the nest, right? But it's still a passion for her. It's still a love for her. And I would absolutely love to see her be an entrepreneur, right? She works very, very hard, but she's always trying to move ahead. But there's no moving unless you make that choice to move. So, right? Jump in the shower. Let's get ready. Let's get on the road, even if we just make it a short day, right? So we can at least feel good about something, that we kept our word for something, right? That we actually held ourselves accountable and not letting ourselves off the hook. And believe me, like I said, it was hard to move today. Didn't want to move at all. And in all truth, when I got home, I didn't do much moving after that. So I'm done. Right? That's it. I'm just going to flake for the rest of the day and not exert any energy at all. And yet, I'm delving into some really amazing topics online. Not so much in those categories that I really sometimes get too deep in, when, right? Because it's important for me, in order for myself to be able to make some movement forward, right? I have to delve into some of those heavy topics that have hindered me in my movement during the course of my lifetime. And even though, right, some of those subjects are difficult, I find them very, very, very interesting. But there's lots of little subjects that are kind of attached to them, but not necessarily. I love delving into emotions. Right, walking in or stumbling into some of these ideas, right? Later on in my life, it was a bit of a loop for me, and to be able to have that opportunity to delve into some of these subjects that not only interest me but benefit me. Like, how did I walk into that, right? And I walked into that blindly. And I look at that as the evidence, and I look at that as the miracle and the graces that come into my life. And I'm not somebody who will allow that piece of meat to be taken out of my jaws, not without a good bit of chewing on it and digesting it, and right, right. But today, to get back on track, is the day we pick the next word that we're going to talk about all this week, you guys. I wish I could have brought more energy in tonight, but maybe what it will be is the word that we pick tonight. Maybe that will bring us the energy, and that energy can come in so many different forms. It could come with a bit of a resolution for a problem, or even a realization that you even have a problem, or I have a problem, right? Sometimes it's actual solutions, right? The things that will help us to move forward. Like that lesson that I had today to say, Alice, just get into the shower. Let's get ready. Come and get me, right? And it was amazing. And we accomplished, right? And that wouldn't have happened unless we had made that choice and taken those initiatives, right? So today we are on word number 12. So for 12 weeks, we have been picking a word. A couple of those weeks have been a challenge in getting that topic out. But in my commitment to myself and my commitment to my brand and to the commitment who follow my content, right? To be able to realize the evidence in myself, right? That maybe somewheres along the line you might decide to jump in, right? Make your own kind of movement in your way. And this is the way I do it, right? It suits me comfortably. It suits me in a way that allows that reward, right? What I just said, to be able to stumble in and be so compelled and so interested and curious in the emotions and having those realizations that some of that resolution for myself lies within that delving in to the emotions. It's not everybody's thing, right? Right? I spend a lot of time online, a lot of time listening to conversations, a lot of time looking and listening and feeling out other people's perspectives in order to realize possibly a perspective for myself, or not, right? I don't gobble down everything just because it's served to me. And this is a great lesson for anybody. Just because something is served to you doesn't mean that it's a truth. My parents used to say to me all the time, right? If so and so told you to jump off the bridge, would you jump off the bridge? Right? This was fair. My dad lived on quotes. The whole household was brought up on quotes. It was like the Ten Commandments, except there was a gazillion quotes, right? And I'm grateful for those steps that my father and my grandmother, right, took before me, that allowed me to have an opportunity even to realize, right, that there was something that I could do in all those decades of not having any of those answers, right? Having all those questions, all those whys, right? And not ever having any of them answered, to actually be able to have some understanding, right? A little bit of forgiveness, because when you have that understanding, it makes it really easy to forgive, right? Because then you get to understand that sometimes things are just not in somebody's evolution in that moment. Doesn't mean they're not going to get there, right? But if they've had an experience with you, if something has come across your path and you've had an experience with that, conversation with that, an adventure with that possibly there could have been some gifts, some rewards in those rewards that we give to each other. And that's kind of like what I'd like to do, showing up here fresh like a loaf of bread every single day. Okay, you guys. Let's pick that word. We're on the right page. Let's pick that word that we're going to talk about all week. It's word number 12. Word number 12. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. We are talking about, wow, you guys, it was almost on forgiveness. But I have to say, it was a little bit closer in all honesty. It was the one word below it. So this week, we are going to talk about balance. For me, balance is the middle ground, and we'll go deeper on that in the later in the week, because it popping into my mind like that, it tells me that it's something that's really, really important. That if we're going to talk about balance, that part of it is going to have to impact me, I think, number one. But I'll also, I think, in order for anybody to move forward, that I have to find a way to explain it, my understandings, because I have understandings when it comes to balance. And it's really strange. Oh my goodness, you guys. You know, just before I came live tonight, I was watching a documentary. It's a different one, but I watch a YouTuber who presents a same kind of show. It's called Vancouver Watcher, but this one I was watching was actually same kind of presentation, but it was a news, not a news broadcast, but a report, like a documentary, but it was made for the newscast, and it was all about the fentanyl use in Ottawa, and with the homeless and the situation. And when I talk about wanting to be able to be emotionally balanced, because we're living in a world that's right, it's shaking us up, right? I'm sure I feel like a shaker sometime, right? Like today, I just didn't want to do anything, because in the week, right, in our day-to-days, quite often we can feel that, and that's what days off are for, so that we can rest and rejuvenate, re-energize, right? Get back into that balance, right? That ground where we can make a little bit of movement again, right? Carry on. Maybe sometimes excel, depending on how much rest and how much balance we bring into our lives, right? But for most part, for most of us, we don't do that. We don't do that. We live in a world that goes 7 days a week, 365 days a year, and that's the truth. When I was growing up, at the very least, Sundays was shutdown day. That was day for church. That was day, right? My mother was a churchgoer. My father wasn't. My dad was spiritual. My mother was Christian, but non-denominational. She dabbled in all of them: Jehovah Witnesses, evangelical, gospel, Pentecostal, right? But we were born Protestant. But in that idea, and let me get back to this idea, because we are on the topic of balance, and to bring in that idea of religion, bring it back to me, because we were going into something important that I wanted to make um, a point in. Okay, well, if I lost it, I lost it. And when I come in back into my life, after my live tonight, I'll come back and it'll, right, I let into it. It's going to click just like that. I'm going to go, oh my goodness. Oh, yes, the fentanyl use. See, I just traveled down these side branches. I traveled down on that one. But in Ottawa, and we see that in this world that we're living in, that people are just waking up and immediately just crashing into that. I don't want to be here, right? I don't care about life. Or even to just forget about all those problems and all that fear and all that repeated trauma sometimes that, right, is in repeat in that patterning at us all the time. For me, and I didn't realize that, but for me, I've always been a realist until I wasn't a realist. But still a realist because it's my programming, right? That see it to believe it, to see the evidence in order before I even take it on as a possibility of something that I might wear or I might try right? I might delve into a little bit deeper. But waking up to some of these ideas, right? I realized I was not thinking straight, or I was thinking differently, right? I was a realist, so I chose to say that I was thinking differently, and I was grateful, right? Because thinking differently left me open to different ideas. And so when we talk about balance, a lot of my movement in my life was thinking that I was unbalanced. When in all truth, I was just different, right? Chew on that one for a minute, right? That's something that kind of needs to sink into us, because when we wake up to this idea that, right, everything is so like upside down, so different than what we know or that we ever realized or ever thought could be possible, that it looks so different that it's scary, right? And so, for a moment, right, without that being able to recognize sometimes, right, because we are such realists, that when we see something different, right, that sometimes we don't get it because we've never experienced it before, right? But then once we experience it, if you do this, right, and you allow your curiosity and allow some of those answers, right? Right in the beginning, you don't want the answers, right? Because the answers drum up the pain. But the idea is to get rid of the pain. And that was the first thing that I came to realize in this process. That was that if I was wanting to, it wasn't that I wanted to be a realist, right? Maybe I was clinging on a little bit, right, to reality. Maybe it was in that idea of the baby steps that, right, I believed it. I saw the evidence. It smacked me like a freight train upside the head, right? There was no denying the experience. But how can I draw in something so big without it really truly affecting me in a way that I might crash? And right, and so we go back to this conversation, this broadcast that I saw in the fentanyl and what's going on, right, in Ottawa. Like in 2016, 6 people a day were dying from fentanyl overdoses. In 2023, there are over 20 people dying every single day from fentanyl overdose, right? This idea that people are waking up to what right? What's so scary, what's so fearful, and waking up to the idea, right, that possibly that they're not stable, that they're unstable because what they're being forced to realize, right, might be something they've never realized before. And it might be very, very scary. And sometimes not to face that, right? We choose not to face that. Lots of us do. And then some of us, right, we're going to face it, but we're going to control it. We're going to manipulate it. We're going to steer it the way it should go or way we think it's going to go, right? And then others are just like a dryer and we're just clothes just tumbling around and we're just, right, that idea that I say sometimes, riding the waves. But I do ride the waves, right? I do take in the lessons. It's all of it combined. It's that idea of adapting and conquering. And because I want to do things in baby steps so that it's not scary, so that I can absorb the truth into my system without it cranking me or making me want to crash, right? Right? I could have just have easily been a fentanyl addict. I could have been somebody who did heroin. I could have been an alcoholic. There was alcoholism in my family. My grandfather was one of those street alcoholics, right? Who lived in bus shacks. And that's the truth. And each one of us in our generations, right, did a little bit better until I have no alcoholism in my immediate family when it comes to me, my sisters, my nieces, my nephews. That's not something that's in our line in this generation. But it was through some of those choices. And, my father was already passed away. My father passed away at 47 years old, but he extended his life double by double from some of those beliefs and practices and in some of those steps and movements that he made, right? And I celebrated my 62nd birthday yesterday. And I know for a fact, because it was kind of a running joke growing up, that none of us live to be into our 40s, and on my dad's side of the family at the very least. And it was a fact. Everybody was so sick and, right, heart disease and just all kinds of emotional issues, right? Because that was that awakening to some of the ideas and then immediately crashing because we didn't want to deal with it or delving into those coping mechanisms so that we didn't have to face it. And I want to face it because the rewards, right? That I'm rewarding myself because I'm getting answers in some of those lot of questions that I've had into those why, why, right? In that anticipation and understanding and be able to forgive some of those situations, that I'll be able to have some balance in my life, some resolution in my life, some movement when my whole life there wasn't any. I was just kind of stuck. I was in that dryer. I was rolling around, tumbling along. I was on that surfboard. I was riding those waves. I was battling and I was headstrong and I was steering that wheel, right? I was adapting and conquering the best that I could. And this way, right? Lots of times I'm sitting at the laptop and I'm taking in lessons from amazing people who have had those experiences, and then I get to, right, take in those lessons and digest them for myself and wear them for myself and decide for myself whether it's something that might help me in this process. But I find that it is in that middle ground, it is in that balance, and it is in that one lesson that your purpose comes from your pain. That, right? That that purpose is going to be rewarding you. It's rewarding me in the end. My love for taking in the lessons, my love for that movement forward, those answers that I've been getting from all those experiences, right? That I had in my life to be able to have some resolution for myself is making it so that I can move a little bit better. And you heard that in my voice. I can breathe a little bit better. I can relax into the lessons a little bit better because even if they're a little bit uncomfortable in the moment, when it's absorbed into the system or dispelled from the system, I feel so much better. I move a little bit better, right? I'm coping a little bit better, right? And that's the idea of it. I'm not swinging in the extremes. I'm not waking up and crashing and saying, I'm hiding from this. I'm going to face it, but I'm going to do it in baby steps and in little doses. For me, that's where the balance is because I don't want to re-traumatize myself, right? I don't want to uh, be incapacitated, right? When watching this documentary of people who are so vulnerable that they can't even face their problems. They can't even begin. They could if they wanted to. There's right in baby steps. There's always some place that you can start, even if it's just in the realization, right? And once you have that realization, maybe you can make another step. It's just a matter of putting one foot in front of the other. Balance is a toughie. I think it's right in the middle. It's right in the middle. It's right. It's not comfortable and it's not uncomfortable. But there's movement right in the middle, right? Because I'm not taking it to the high extremes and I'm not facing it, and I am facing it. But again, in those baby steps, I'm just taking little nibbles along the way. And I'm sure there's lots of people that are saying, "Oh, move your butt, Cindy. We need those answers yesterday." Right? But nobody's gonna get any answers unless, right, we can make that movement in a way that I'm not re-traumatizing myself, right? That I'm not letting myself be that collateral damage. I'm not sacrificing myself any longer, right? And that's the middle, right? Because there was a time that I wouldn't even give it a thought. I wouldn't even give it a thought, whether it was to feel like I belonged, to feel like somebody loved me, to feel like I had some value, right? I'm doing this the right way for myself. So, for talking about balance, everybody's got to have that sense of balance for themselves. Because I can tell you, I know people that you're not going to have them do baby steps like I do baby steps. Their baby steps are going to be going 100 miles an hour, right? That'll still be baby steps from there for them, right? Because on the norm, their baby steps are 1,000 miles an hour, right? I never moved that way, right? And a lot of it is in my hypervigilance, right? Looking out for my safety, not making those moves. Hello, Melvin. Yabba dabba do, right? That is, oh no, not Yabba Dabba Doo. Habba Dabba Doo. Huh. I don't know who that, I know where Yabba Dabba Doo is. That's the Flintstones, right? That was the Flintstones. And what just came across my mind was that cartoon. that was popular in that same era as the Flintstones, which were really popular in the 60s and 70s when television first came out. Wow, my voice. Um, but that television cartoon, the Jetsons, right? And if you watch some of those reruns of the Jetsons, that was supposed to be futuristic. And yet, living in the day that we're living in right now, a lot of that is fact, right? Them talking on the screens, right? Computer monitors to these days, flying in planes in the sky like they were streets in the sky. Isn't that exciting? To think that that is going to be a possibility, and I suspect that it will, because right, somebody thought of it, and what you think about is realized, and we get to create, right? We always, I think, part of being in that middle is that we see the end game. We see it, right? And we want it. We want to be there. We want to be there yesterday, and because we can't be there in this moment, right? We beat ourselves up. We give up quite often, right? Because it just seems so far away. It seems so unattainable, right? That sometimes we just want to say, right? Don't want to be here. Let's escape. Where are those coping mechanisms, right? Right? Or we live in those extremes, just live in that high wire of realizing that, right, we're not getting what we want, and we beat ourselves up, and again we'll self-sabotage in that, won't we? We'll self-sabotage, and I think for a lot of people, right, we don't want it. We Because we see it, because we see that potential, and because it's, to us it just seems so close, that we don't give up. We just keep striving, right? And in that sense of balance, we can't find that moment of crash, which we all need, which is kind of how I came into my live today, saying, right, it was hard for us to move today, but we found a way to do it, because those lessons along the way told us that we're just not going to make any movement unless we make that choice. And we made that choice today, and we found some movement. And maybe it wasn't the big successful, right? And we didn't accomplish everything, but we accomplished something. We made some kind of headway, so that we can feel that possibly, right, maybe tomorrow we can make a little bit more headway. Tomorrow is editing day, right? Being able to hold myself accountable a little bit, right? Making sure that my day has its basic needs taken care of, if that's all I can accomplish, those basic needs, that will be enough, because that's how I move, that's how I roll. That's right. Those baby steps are acceptable and agreeable to me, and they fit nicely in the middle of my in my life, because it makes it so that I don't get discouraged in seeing that potential not being realized yesterday, right? That it's okay, because I've agreed that we're going to do this in baby steps, that we're going to not beat ourselves up, that we're just going to stay in that middle ground and maybe ride some of those waves, right? Maybe do a little bit of adapt and conquer, a little bit of taking those baby spoons full of baby food, and just, right, just open your mouth, you can take all, and just doing a little bit of that for myself, right? If I have to coddle myself, I'll coddle myself. I did it. I coddled myself numerous times a day, because again, I didn't want to move today, right? Sometimes you have to treat yourself like you're a 2-year-old, right? Sometimes you have to. It's part of the middle ground and it's acceptable, right? Because we're doing it in baby steps. Because if we said that's not acceptable, this is the list and you've got to accomplish everything on this list, right? You got to get all of this done, right? No excuses. That it would be overwhelming for me. I know for myself it would be because I need that. It's in the programming, right? It is in the programming, and I hold myself accountable in those baby steps, but I don't hold myself accountable to that perfection in creating the best human being I possibly can. I realize that there are limitations in that, right? And I am proud that I'm still moving, right, forward every single day, right? Not perfectly, right? Not perfectly, not having any of the answers, but at least I can say I'm trying because there are people out there who are not even trying. They're waking up and they're just immediately just crashing to nothingness, right? And I think being in the middle is realistic because I don't want to wake up personally. I know lots of people want to be there yesterday, right? I see that potential for myself too. But I'm not going to beat myself to get there. And I'm not going to beat myself for not being there. But I'm going to get there, right? Because I'm going to ride the waves that come across knowing that, right? It was a good one. This is a lesson for my sister, actually. Let's tell this one right now. I told her I was just going to tell my audience. It was such a revelation for me because I talk about the 360s. I talk about, you know, we have to make that movement. Each one of us knows really the direction we're supposed to be moving in, but lots of times, sometimes out of obligation, right? Sometimes out of that sensitivity and not realizing that we have it in us to make that kind of movement, we can find ourselves stuck, right? Sometimes they call it fear, fawning, freezing. That sometimes we just get stuck and nothing moves. And I talk about it all the time. Sometimes I refer to it as the crank. Whoever, whatever says, oh my goodness, Cindy's not moving. Cindy's not listening. Cindy's not making choices, right? Cindy's not digesting the lessons. Let's give her a crank. And then the next thing you know, my life is upside down on its head and I'm dealing with something which is obviously a lesson that I should have had yesterday, but because I woke up and just kind of crashed it and said, oh yeah, no, that's just too big, and didn't even take any baby steps in order to digest it in any way, didn't find any middle ground. I just totally rejected it right off the hop because it was just too big, too scary, or too hard. Oh, good. I sound like these are the lessons, though. These are the lessons, and some lessons I truly do believe in because I've seen the evidence myself in that. Right? I'm at least trying. I'm making movement. I'm doing it in small steps. I'm not re-traumatizing myself, and I'm not going to let somebody's judgment and saying, "Get to it, Cindy." Right? Like we need the answer yesterday, right? I want to do this in a way that I can be the evidence for others that, you don't have to beat yourself out. You don't have to take out the whip on yourself and do that mush, right? You've had that in your entire life. And I think, right, that maybe if you're waking up to some of these ideas, like I'm waking up to some of these ideas, that maybe you've come into the realization that, right, you could have been a little bit more considerate to yourself, right? That you didn't have to join the club, right? When it was being divvied out. I know for myself, I picked up that baton and I believed what was projected onto me, and sometimes it was right, choke on this, right? This is it, right? Sometimes I truly believed that I couldn't accomplish anything on my own, right? That it was all about the people that I was surrounding myself, and as much as they were utilizing me, I was utilizing them too, right? Even if it was just being the spectator in their lives, because there was lessons in that, because I certainly wouldn't be here right now if there wasn't, right? Balance to each one of us is a little bit different because we have different programming. So we shouldn't be judging people in how we are taking in, right, in our day to day conversations and interactions, those passions that we have, those hobbies that we have, right? Those political ideas, religious ideas, all of the ingredients of our lives contribute to the human being that we are. But we have a say in that, in our choices, right? You make a choice and life changes. And if you make that choice and you don't start making those changes, I was talking about the crank. Well, the other thing I was talking about, which is reference to the crank, whoever, whatever, will give you the crank and try and get you back onto the right road. Sometimes I refer to this as the 360. And I was talking to my sister last week. We were sitting having a conversation about God and the 360s, right? Because she's on a path of healing right now. Like she's had some doozy few years, right? And lots of us have those stories, but it is in each one of our choices and whether or not we're going to make that time that we're in that mess a little bit more comfortable, because we can make it comfortable for ourselves, right? Just as easily as we can wake up to the ideas again, nah, that ain't happening, and then just crash into whatever makes us feel comfortable. It's all in our choices. And my sister says, Cindy, well, you got the 360 totally wrong. God isn't giving you a 360, right? Because a 360 quite often is just putting you back into the spot that you were in before to do it over again. And I thought about it and I said, that is a possibility because quite often, right, I have to start over, right? Do it over again. Who wants to do anything over again, right? I took my driver's test 3 times before I passed it, right? It wasn't fun, but I did it because I knew I wouldn't be driving. I wouldn't have had all those outdoor adventures if I didn't get my driver's license, right? So it's sometimes just a matter of never giving up, right? But my sister said that, God doesn't give out 360s, right? God gives out 180s. And I thought about it. 180s. She goes, yes. When you're up here and you're going in the wrong direction, God will crank you 180, right? In the direction that you need to be, which is usually the opposite direction because that's where fair, right? That's where all these feelings that we have when it comes to doing what we have to do or what we know we should do, right? In those choices that we want. And usually we just go in the opposite direction because when we make a choice, change happens and we don't like change, right? We like things comfy. We like to be able to know from one moment to the next what's coming next. But there's nothing in the learning when that happens. And I came to realize that very, very, very early in the life, and right, not even woken up to any of these ideas, and already those lessons. And I'm grateful for however the lessons get to me, however the lessons get to me. But isn't that the thing? The lessons got to me anyway, right? The lessons got to me anyway. So why can't we relax in this? Why can't we find a middle ground? Why can't we try to enjoy this life that I don't know, you guys? I wouldn't give it up for anything, right? I'm creating the best human being I possibly can. That's a challenge I'm up to. And I'm carrying on the legacy of my grandmother and my father, right? And maybe being the evidence for, well, my sisters in their struggles, or my nieces and nephews in the stories that they're playing out, right? Sometimes we're to an extremes, right? I don't want to wake up and crash into my crash onto the pavement on my face, but at the same token, I don't want to miss the views. I don't want to go so fast on that train that I can't take in the experience and I can't absorb what I need to absorb to make it so that I can enjoy the views, right? Because a lot of the reasons that I don't enjoy some of those views, some of those experiences, right, is because of the experiences. Prime example, I do not like seafood. I'm not a big fan of seafood anymore. My dad was a commercial fisherman, right? And we ate fish, oh, everything, right? Everything. And being a low income family, right? There, it was in the house abundantly. My mother made the English fish and chips. I would eat that. She made great English fish and chips only because I didn't recognize it because I had like 4 inches of batter on it, right? But I do not care for fish anymore, right? Because of that experience of how much fish I actually had to take into my system as a child and as a young adult. And I really enjoyed some of the things. I right? There's still a few things like the breaded shrimp I will eat. Up until recently I did enjoy salmon still, but kind of given up on the salmon now too because I just my taste buds don't, right? Just don't take it. And so I don't have to beat myself up because, right, these things that I should care, like, right? Fish is good for you, so full of nutrients, right? But I beat myself up because I'm not taking care of myself in the things that I'm bringing into my system. But these are my limiting beliefs, and I didn't mean to get into that, but maybe that's part of the middle ground too, because that's part of the crash and not facing your problems, right? Is where we find our answers. But that's also within our weaknesses, isn't it? Right? You know, I wasn't so good. I've got some nacho chips sitting on my desk there, and yeah, I'm gonna make my dinner. I know it's late. Oh my goodness, it's going on 11 o'clock, and I pulled out hamburgers. Maybe I'm done for tonight. Yeah, maybe I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm ready. I'm ready for bed. And I was about to make dinner, but that could go into the fridge, and that can be lunch for tomorrow, right? Right? Maybe that's the middle ground for me tonight. That little bit of compromise for those little bit of extras in that exhaustion, that not wanting to move, that mogmire, right? And you just go, oh, forget this. Let's have the nacho chips and let's pull out the jujubes. Oh, jujubes. I haven't had jujubes in probably it's got to be 15 years now. I gave up hard candy because there's zero foods. It was kind of like trying in those baby steps to get control over my eating habits. I gave up a few things. I gave up peanut butter, but periodically I buy a jar of peanut butter. But for the most part, I could stay off the peanut butter. gave up candy. I gave up bread for years, but I'm eating bread right now. But it's in those trying, right? Like I said, like lots of people are not even trying. And sometimes it's in that adapt and conquer, riding the waves, right? Eliminating a few things that we can find little ways that can make our lives a little bit better. But back to that idea before I take off, because I'm losing track and I'm dabbling. That idea of the crank, and my sister says, it's not a 360, Cindy. It's a 180, right? Because whoever, whatever, is trying to get us back on track. So we get a crank in the opposite direction, right? And then again, it's like a fresh start. And it's in our choices, right? Are we going to wake up and crash, right? Are you going to go 100 miles an hour, right? And maybe 100 miles an hour is a slow pace for you because normally you go 1,000 miles an hour. Fantastic, great. I'm not 1,000 miles an hour girl, right? I want to do this right for me. I want to come out of this, well, as unscathed as possibly as I can. Also being the evidence so that other people might be able to, right, say, hey, maybe, right, Cindy kind of did something there. Maybe I can try something, or maybe, right, search out people who've had those experiences that you're dealing with and be able to, right, smooth it over a little bit, right? Maybe you might not be able to take a big bite out of it. You can take a little one. Just like I said, just the idea that you're even contemplating it, right? I think that's amazing, right? And there are lots of people out there who are always chasing to be better by themselves. I don't have a problem with that. Even when they never, they're never going to succeed, right? You could just see, but they talk the good talk, and every once in a while, like my grandpa, he would stop drinking for a few months or a year, right? But he fell back in it. But at least he was trying, right? At least he recognized the issues that he was bringing upon himself and bringing upon his family, right? So you have to appreciate those small steps because sometimes we can't take those big ones. Those big ones are just too darn scary, right? Right? And I don't want to be one to be traumatizing myself, right? And I avoid traumatizing myself, right? Because I'm avoiding those 180s or 360s, depending on how you look at it, because I still believe that whoever, whatever gives us 360s, because that's in the repeat, right? If you're lucky enough to get that same lesson when you failed it the first time, to be able to get that lesson again, right? That's a gift right in that, right? That says at least you were trying, right? That they thought maybe you could just do a little bit better by yourself this time. Right? I'm making goals for this year. I can make great big goals, but I know, right? I would kind of poop out on them or procrastinate or give myself permission. And maybe I would even think about them so much and go, what was I thinking to think so big? And then it becomes too big and too scary, and then I don't even want to try, right? Then I take these little bits and little bites, right? Eliminate this, eliminate that. And what happens? At the very least, it's not as uncomfortable. In fact, possibly, I do believe I'm missing some of those cranks. I'm missing some of those 360s. And I'm missing some of those 180s. I'm not missing them like I'm sad I'm missing them. They're just kind of missing. And I actually think that's a pretty good thing because we know those cranks are not comfortable, right? They could be very painful. They could be economically quite frightening. They could be emotionally lonely, scary, heartbreaking, and full of grief, right? I got some action going on in the front of the building right now, so we're gonna call it a night. Yeah, we're really gonna call it a night. I'm ready for bed. I think I'm gonna have a bath, pair of pajamas, taking a lesson, crawl into bed, and then get up tomorrow determined, yet, right? Taking myself into consideration, right? I hold myself accountable, right? I got to get the job done, but who's to say how it's going to play out, right? Just be proud of the effort, and that's what I'm going to do tomorrow. Is be proud of the effort and get some movement done that way. Okay, you guys, that's it for tonight. Word number 12 for this week. We are dealing with. It's not dealing with. We are delving into this word, and it was right after it's forgiveness, and this is word number 12. I'm just going to highlight it off. I'm going to delve into a little bit different tomorrow, right? Because it's always been my intent. That's the idea of delving into emotions, is so that we can live this life, create the best human being we possibly can, deal with all the stuff on the outside that's infecting and affecting the inside, right? And make it a more bearable, tolerable, enjoyable, exciting, full of movement, right? And not so confusing. Not so confusing. Okay, you guys. Hello, Nancy dear. Have a great night. We'll see you. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.